My name is Lauren Mitchell. I'm 36 years old, and the moment my father laughed at me, actually laughed, into a microphone in front of a ballroom full of executives, I knew I was done staying quiet. It happened in Chicago. A charity gala, maybe 250 people in the room, suits, diamonds, cameras flashing. My dad was on stage celebrating 35 years as a real estate developer. Big man, big reputation, and then he said it. Lauren couldn't make it earlier, he joked. She's busy organizing art projects or whatever it is she does. People chuckled, some politely, some not. I just stood there near the back, holding my clutch so tight my fingers hurt, because inside that bag was something he never saw coming. But I'll get to that. Before I continue, be honest, have you ever been the less important child, the one nobody really takes seriously? Yeah, then you'll understand exactly how this feels. Let me take you back a couple months before that night. We were at my parents' house in Scottsdale, Arizona. Sunday dinner, same routine, same seating, same conversations that somehow always circled back to my younger brother, Ethan. Ethan's a corporate attorney in New York, Harvard Law, corner office, the golden child. Dad couldn't stop talking about him. Ethan just closed a $12 million deal, he said, carving into his steak like he was signing paperwork. That's the kind of work that builds a legacy. Ethan smiled. It was a team effort. Of course it was, but in my dad's eyes it was all him. Then Dad looked at me. You still doing, what is it, community stuff, community stuff. I run a nonprofit, or I did at the time. We worked with underfunded schools, building creative programs for kids who didn't have access to arts education. We had helped over 600 students in 2 years, but to him. Yeah, I said, still doing that. He nodded like I'd just told him I babysit on weekends. Well, at least you enjoy it, he added. At least, that phrase followed me my whole life. At least she's happy, at least she's trying. At least she's not a problem, never, she's successful. Growing up, it was always like this. Ethan got praise, I got patience. When I was 17, I won a statewide art competition, first place. My piece got displayed in a gallery downtown. Do you know what my dad said? That's nice, Lauren, but what are you going to do for a real career? That moment stayed with me, so I stopped trying to impress him. I built my life quietly instead. What nobody in my family knew was that about a year before that dinner, I had started working with a private foundation in San Francisco. At first, I was just a consultant, helping them design youth programs, but one project led to another, then another, until one day the board chair pulled me aside after a meeting and said, "We're expanding, and we need someone to lead our national initiatives." That role came with influence, real influence, funding decisions, partnerships, multi-million-dollar grants. I didn't tell my family, not when I applied, not when I interviewed. Not even when I got the final call, because part of me wanted to see what would happen if they kept underestimating me. Now back to that dinner. My phone buzzed under the table, an email, subject line. Final approval, executive director appointment. My heart started racing. I excused myself, went outside and opened it. I got it. The job, executive director of one of the fastest-growing education foundations in the country. We were managing over $180 million in funding. And here's the part that made my hands shake, one of the largest proposals under review, a redevelopment project in Illinois, led by my father's company. I actually laughed out loud. The universe has a sense of humor. A week later, my dad called. "Don't forget the gala," he said. "It's important." "I'll be there," I replied. "Good," he said. "Just try not to be late this time." I almost told him, almost, but I didn't, because something told me the truth would land better if it came at the right moment. The day of the gala, I had meetings all morning, real meetings. With board members, policy advisors, people who actually listened when I spoke. Then I got dressed, simple black dress, nothing flashy. No one needed to know who I was yet. And then that moment, standing in the back of the ballroom. Hearing my father reduce my entire life to a punchline, watching people laugh, feeling that familiar heat in my chest, but this time it didn't turn into embarrassment. It turned into clarity. Then something unexpected happened. A woman walked into the room, confident, calm, recognized immediately by several people. It was Diane Keller, chair of our foundation. She spotted me almost instantly, gave me a small nod, and then she walked straight to the stage. "Excuse me," she said, taking the microphone from my father with a polite smile. The room quieted. "I apologize for the interruption," she said, "but there's an announcement that simply can't wait." My dad stepped back, confused. He thought it was about his project. I could see it on his face. He even adjusted his jacket. "We're proud to introduce the new executive director of our National Education Initiative," she continued. Pause. Then she looked right at me. "Lauren Mitchell." Silence, not a single sound. I started walking, slow, steady. Every step felt like it echoed. I could feel hundreds of eyes on me. When I reached the stage, my father looked like he didn't recognize me anymore. "Would you like to say a few words?" Diane asked. I took the microphone, took a breath. "My work has always been about giving people a voice," I said. Especially the ones no one thinks to listen to. I glanced at my dad, and making sure opportunity isn't decided by perception but by purpose. Applause started, soft at first, then louder, real, the rest of the night, a blur. People coming up to me, congratulating me, asking questions. My brother just stared, shaking his head like he was trying to catch up. My mom cried, and my father, he didn't say a word. Later in the hallway, he finally approached me. "You planned this?" he asked. "No," I said. "I earned it." He looked smaller somehow. "You should have told me," he said. I paused. "Would you have listened?" He didn't answer. A few days later, the board met to review proposals. I recused myself from anything related to his company. Didn't need to interfere, the truth spoke for itself. Their proposal, denied, lack of community impact. Weak educational structure, all the things he never believed mattered. We didn't talk for a while after that, but something shifted, not just in him, in me, because for the first time I didn't need his approval. A month later, he sent me a message, just one sentence. "I'm starting to understand what you actually do." It wasn't an apology, but it was something. Here's the truth. Sometimes the people who underestimate you the most are the ones who taught you how to be strong in the first place. Not by support, but by absence of it, and maybe that's enough. So if you've ever been overlooked, ignored, made to feel small, just remember this. You don't need to prove anything loudly. You just need to build something real, quietly, until the moment comes when the truth speaks for you. I didn't expect what came after. I thought the hardest part was over, that once the truth came out, everything would just settle. I was wrong, because the real shift didn't happen on that stage. It happened the next morning. I woke up in my apartment in Chicago to my phone blowing up. Messages, emails, missed calls. At first I thought something went wrong, then I opened one of the messages. "Is this you?" It was a link to an article. Developer's daughter revealed as executive director overseeing major grant decisions. My stomach dropped. It had already spread. By noon, 3 different business outlets had picked up the story. By the afternoon, people I hadn't spoken to in years were suddenly so proud of me. Funny how that works. When I got to the office that day, everything felt different. Not new, just clear. People looked at me differently. Not with surprise, not with doubt, with respect, real respect. The kind that doesn't come from a title alone, but from finally being seen. Diane met me in the conference room. "You handled last night well," she said. "I didn't plan any of that," I admitted. "I know," she smiled. "That's why it worked." She slid a folder across the table. "Board review is tomorrow," she said. "You'll need to be present." I already knew what that meant. My father would be there. That night I barely slept. Not because I was nervous about the meeting, but because I kept replaying that moment on stage. Not his joke, not the laughter, but his face when he realized who I had become. It wasn't anger, it wasn't pride either. It was something in between, something unfamiliar. The next morning I walked into the boardroom early. Floor-to-ceiling windows, long glass table, 12 seats. I placed my nameplate down. Lauren Mitchell, executive director. Even seeing it still felt surreal. One by one the board members arrived, then he walked in, my father, same posture, same suit, same controlled expression, but his eyes different. He avoided looking at me at first, took his seat across the table, not at the head, across. The meeting started. Diane led it, calm and precise. "Today we're reviewing final proposals for the National Education Initiative," she said. She glanced at me briefly. "As previously stated, Lauren will not participate in voting on any proposals involving personal connections. Professional, clean, clear, no room for emotion, exactly how I wanted it." They started with 2 other proposals, strong, detailed, well-structured. Then my father's project came up. Mitchell Development Group, Deanne Reed, my last name, still felt strange hearing it in that context. Requesting $4.5 million in funding for urban redevelopment with community education components. She looked at him. "Would you like to elaborate?" He nodded, confident, controlled. "Our project focuses on revitalizing underdeveloped areas," he began, "creating spaces that benefit families and encourage long-term growth." He spoke well, he always did, but I noticed something. He avoided specifics. No clear education plan, no measurable outcomes, just big ideas. One of the board members leaned forward. "Can you walk us through the educational framework?" she asked. A pause. "It will be integrated during development," he said. "How?" she pressed. "Our team will collaborate with local organizations." "Which organizations?" Another pause. I watched his hands. For the first time in my life, they weren't steady. Diane stepped in gently. "The foundation requires defined educational strategies," she said. "Curriculum plans, qualified educators, measurable impact." Silence. Then my father said something that made the room shift. "We've built successful projects for decades," he said. "Our results speak for themselves." One of the board members responded calmly. "This grant isn't about construction success, it's about educational impact." That hit hard. I stayed quiet, completely still, not out of revenge but because I didn't need to say anything. The truth was already there. After a few more questions, Diane nodded. "Thank you," she said. We'll proceed to a vote. One by one, hands went up, not mine, I didn't even look at him. Decision recorded, Diane said, then she closed the folder. Mitchell Development Group proposal is not approved at this time. No drama. No emotion, just final. The room went silent for a moment. My father didn't move, didn't argue, didn't react. He just sat there processing. The meeting continued. More discussions, more votes, but honestly, everything after that felt distant, because something had already shifted, not in the room, in him. When it ended, people started gathering their things. Quiet conversations, professional nods. I stood up, ready to leave, then I heard his voice. Lauren, I turned. He was still seated, looking at the table, not at me. I walked over slowly. Yes, he took a breath. That was fair, he said. I blinked. Of all the things I expected, that wasn't one of them. The proposal wasn't ready, he added. I see that now. Still not looking at me, I nodded. That's what the process is for, I said. Simple, neutral, professional. Then he finally looked up. And for the first time, there was no judgment in his eyes. No comparison, no dismissal, just recognition. I didn't understand what you built, he said quietly. The words hung there, heavy, real. I didn't rush to respond, didn't need to. Because this moment wasn't about winning. It's okay, I said, and I meant it. He nodded slowly, not proud, not defeated, just different. As I walked out of that building, something inside me felt lighter than it had in years. Not because he changed, but because I did. I stopped needing him to see me before I finally saw myself, and maybe that's the real turning point in stories like this. Not the public reveal, not the applause. Not even the moment they realize they were wrong. It's the moment you realize you were never small to begin with. I wish I could tell you that everything changed overnight, that my dad suddenly became supportive, that we had some emotional conversation, that he apologized for everything. That's not what happened. What happened was quieter than that. And honestly, more real. A few days after the board meeting, I went back to my normal routine. Meetings, strategy sessions, site visits, real work, the kind of work I had been doing for years. Just now, people actually listened when I spoke. But something kept sitting in the back of my mind, that moment in the boardroom, the way my father said that was fair. It wasn't much, but coming from him, it meant everything. Then, about a week later, I got a call. His name popped up on my phone. I just stared at it for a second, because growing up, my dad didn't call me, not really. If we talked, it was usually through my mom or during family dinners. So this was new, I answered. Hey, I said. There was a pause, then he cleared his throat. I've been reviewing the feedback from your board, he said, straight to business. Of course, we're restructuring the proposal. I leaned back in my chair. Okay, another pause. I was wondering, he started, then stopped. That alone caught my attention, my dad hesitating. I was wondering if you could point me in the right direction. Silence, I didn't speak right away. Because I needed to really understand what he was asking, not as a father but as a professional. You want guidance? I asked. Yes, no ego, no defensiveness, just yes, I exhaled slowly. There are rules, I said. I can't directly influence anything related to your project. I understand, but I can explain what the foundation looks for, I added. That's all I'm asking. So we talked, not as father and daughter. Not as someone trying to prove something, but as two people working. I explained everything, how proposals are evaluated, why vague promises don't work, why community partnerships matter. Why education isn't an afterthought, it's the foundation. He didn't interrupt, didn't argue, he just listened. At one point he said something that stuck with me. I used to think results were enough, he admitted. Build something big, something visible, and that's what mattered. I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. And now, I asked, I'm starting to realize impact isn't always visible right away. That was the closest thing to growth I had ever heard from him. After that call, we didn't suddenly become close. We didn't start having long emotional talks, but something shifted. Respect started to grow. A couple weeks later, I got an email, not from him, from his company. Updated proposal submission. I opened it and I froze. It was completely different. Detailed education plan, partnerships with local schools, certified program coordinators, clear metrics. It was everything the board had asked for. Everything he had ignored before. And at the bottom, there was a section titled Community Development Vision. I read it twice, because the language felt different, less corporate, more human. Then I saw a note attached, just one line. Had some help understanding what really matters. No signature, but I knew. When the board reviewed it again this time, I stayed out of it completely. Didn't sit in, didn't observe. I didn't need to, because this wasn't about me anymore. Later that day, Diane walked into my office. They approved it, she said. I smiled. Good. She studied me for a second. You don't seem surprised. I'm not, I said. It was finally the right kind of proposal. That evening, I got another message from my dad. We got it. I stared at the screen, then replied, I heard, congratulations. A minute later, my phone rang again. I answered. This time, there was no hesitation in his voice. Thank you, just that, and for a second, I didn't know what to say, because growing up, those were words I never heard from him. You did the work, I said. No, he replied. You showed me how to see it. Silence filled the line, not awkward, just full. I was wrong about your work, he added. There it was, not a dramatic apology, not a long speech, just truth. I closed my eyes for a moment. And something inside me finally settled. You don't have to say anything else, I told him. I know, he said, but I wanted to. We didn't talk much longer after that. We didn't need to because that conversation. It closed something that had been open for years. A month later, we had another family dinner. Same house, same table, but it felt different. Ethan was there talking about a new case. My mom was setting plates like always, and my dad. He looked at me, not past me, not through me, at me. So, he said, how's the new program rollout going? Simple question, but for me, it meant everything. I smiled. It's going well, I said. We're expanding into 3 more cities. He nodded. That's impressive. No hesitation, no at least, just respect. And in that moment, I realized something. This story was never about proving him wrong. It was about outgrowing the need to prove anything at all. Because the truth is, revenge isn't loud. It's not dramatic. It's not about humiliating someone. Real revenge is building a life so strong, so meaningful, that even the people who doubted you have no choice but to see it. And sometimes, if you're lucky, they don't just see it, they learn from it. If this story stayed with you, if you've ever had to grow without recognition, then you already understand the lesson. Don't chase validation, build value, quietly, consistently, until one day it speaks for you. And if you made it this far, like, share, and subscribe to my channel, Real Life Revenge Series, because here, we don't just tell stories, we remind you of your power.